Texans released Shaq Mason. It finally happened. What's next? And do you trust him to get much better? Let's go inside the locker room.
Yeah, it's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top two and we not too plugged in daily digital.
Shaq Mason is gone. We had speculated earlier this week as to whether or not the Texans could actually bring back Shaq Mason. Jonathan Alexander of the Chronicle could put out a piece, just his opinion, not necessarily a report, or not a report, nothing necessarily about it. Wasn't a report. And we kind of went through the reasons why. And really, the three reasons why they could would be favoritism with the guys making the decisions, excuses, and limited options. So even the pitch to bring back Shaq Mason, like at no point did anyone even entertain the possibility of Shaq Mason coming back and playing good ball. Texans had one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Shaq Mason was the worst player on that offensive line. He was awful. And I saw this release, and I immediately kind of went back to the end of the season and just how terrible it was for D'Amico Ryans, Bobby Sawyer, whoever the hell you want to blame. At the end of the day, it's D'Amico's decision to put Shaq Mason back in the starting lineup. And he looked even worse than he had before. And it just so happened to be in a playoff game. And the Texans' offensive line embarrassed itself on the national stage. Shaq Mason last year, PFF stats. I saw Sam Warren put these out of the Chronicle. He allowed 8 sacks, which was second for guards, and 36 pressures, which was 9th. He missed a handful of games. So the Shaq Mason thing was a frustrating thing. It was mishandled. And quite frankly, it was embarrassing that, and DJ Bieneme brought this up. Alexander even brought this up when he was entertaining the possibility of bringing him back. I brought it up at training camp, and I've been saying it really all season long. Shaq Mason was out of shape. And we did the exercise earlier today where if you go back, if you type in Shaq Mason on Google and then you put images, he's never been a skinny guy. But look at the difference in his body in the old Texans uniforms and the new ones that they just wore this year. It's easy to point out because you immediately know what year it is. And Shaq Mason was out of shape. I saw Bill Barnwell put this up, and I want to get into D'Amico and Caserio and whether or not you trust them to fix this. But Bill Barnwell said this. And I know Bill Barnwell has to do a lot. I'm not sure he watched too many Texans games, so I can't blame him. But this seems like you're just kind of talking to talk. Quote, a little bit of a surprise to see the Texans create some money for Christian Kirk by cutting Shaq Mason. No, everyone on the Texans line struggled last year, but $10.5 million isn't a lot for a guard, given how the market exploded last year and how thin OL is in free agency. $10 is too much for Shaq Mason. And if he was going to come back, he was going to have to change his contract around. So I don't know what Bill Barnwell's watching. I don't know what he's saying. I know he prides himself as like the football nerdy type. That right there tells me that he's not very familiar with Shaq Mason's game and what's happened as of late. And I saw Alexander say this as well, and I'm not picking on him. Barnwell just said the same thing. That $10 million isn't that much. $10 million isn't that much for a guy who sucks, or even for a guy who's average. Like Mekhi Becton made what, $3 million last year? I know that's the extreme example, but just $10 million, it's not much for a guard. Maybe not the elite guards. Maybe that would be good. But they don't have that. And I will say, Shaq Mason was not, I don't think he was the only offensive lineman out of shape. And I would like to see there at least be some sort of, Laramie Tunsil's a captain. I know he just keeps his eyes on his own paper. Sometimes that's the best way to move if you just want to sustain. But maybe instill some sort of, I don't want to say culture. Let's just say what D'Amico always says. Iron sharpens iron. Let's instill something to where, because Laramie Tunsil's in such good physical shape, and he takes great care of himself. How about making the rest of the offensive linemen kind of follow that lead? I think that would be a good start. If iron sharpens iron, quit having guys come into camp out of shape. And it's also a bad look for Caserio and D'Amico because you pay these offensive linemen and then all of a sudden they get in good shape or bad shape. Doesn't make any sense at all. Italo says best leaders are non-vocal. I don't know about that. I don't know if that's true, especially in football. And I don't know that that's the way to go. But yeah, there was definitely a problem there. And I like D'Amico and Caserio. I like the fact that they're proactively making changes. I like the fact that they got rid of Bobby.
Damn it, Bobby.
I like the fact that they're at least making a change as to who's coaching the offensive line. I like that they got rid of their worst offensive lineman. But, and this is a serious but, I have trust issues with them when it comes to evaluating offensive linemen. I have serious trust issues. Any area, any way that you want to evaluate building an offensive line, whether it's through trading, whether it's through paying, whether it's through drafting, Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans have been piss poor. They've been terrible. Now, is that just some sort of coincidence? Do the schemes kind of get mixed up? Is there something else to it? Don't know. But there's a lot of things I trust these guys to do. I trust Nick Caserio to be able to pivot whenever push comes to shove. I think he's one of the best pivoters that I've seen for a general manager. When you inherit a situation where Deshaun Watson wants to leave, where there's all these cases, you wait it out, you get the guys, and oh, by the way, he has a no trade clause. You find the team's willing to trade, and then you get max value. That's a pivot. When you try to get Saquon Barkley, the running back market gets drained, and then you go trade for Joe Mixon so he doesn't even hit the market. That's a good pivot. I think Nick Caserio does an excellent job of pivoting. D'Amico Ryans, it doesn't matter who the hell's playing on defense, who's injured, what he's dealing with, whether he has no starting linebackers, whether Will Anderson's out, whether he's missing a corner, whether the safety position is a disaster, D'Amico Ryans is going to have his defense ready to play. He also, more times than not, at the lowest points, is going to have his team bounce back at the highest points. He's going to remain even keel for better or worse, no matter how frustrating that can be to media types or fans. But they suck at offensive line evaluation. They suck. Small sample size, maybe. But forgive me for kind of being hesitant. Whoever they sign, whoever they draft, if it's a DB, okay, let's see. This guy's going to be a player. If it's an offensive lineman, It's just a little bit hesitant. Can't really feel good about it. The offensive line. That's one of their Achilles heels. The other thing that the Texans failed to do was capitalize on CJ Stroud's rookie deal. Very blah effort. And that was something that we were dying to see. You got the quarterback on the rookie deal. You can make some bread. All they did is extend guys who ate bread and got bread, hypothetically and literally. They got about a half a season of Stephon Diggs, $16 million dead cap of Diggs after that. Dalton Schultz, 2-year contract, one of the highest paid tight ends in the league. They extended Nico, which is good. Although, yeah, I mean, that's good for sure. And then they signed Danielle Hunter. They failed. Now you have a good enough culture, you have good enough coaches, you find enough players, you can figure it out. But that little opportunity that we spoke of, they failed. It was very blah. Not good. So that kind of comes front and center with the Shaq Mason thing. What the hell are they going to do on offensive line? I don't know. Joseph says they tried to capitalize. I'm not saying they didn't try. They went after Diggs and Mixon. Mixon, they got at a normal deal. I mean, it wasn't like they just went aggressive. That kind of fell into their lap, and they pivoted and made that happen. You said Dalton was supposed to be good tight end, but Bobby had him blocking. Even then, let's say Dalton Schultz is the same thing he was in year one. That's still kind of blah for going all in when you have a quarterback on his rookie deal. Like, you can just compare what some other teams have done when they've had that situation. Dolphins got Tyreek Hill for Tua. The Bills got Stephon Diggs for Josh Allen. Bears are trading for Joe Tunney. They have receivers around Caleb Williams. It's just it was a very blah effort by them. So we'll see where they go. And where they go from here. Cougars swarming the soup.
You ain't never hate.
Swarm.
Best argument for round one wide receiver is we need youth there more than anywhere else. But I trust Nico with a round 4 DT more than a round 4 wide receiver. D'Amico has drafted, they drafted Tank Dell in round 3. That was a fine pick. That was a good pick. I wanted Mims. It seems like he's coming on a little bit, but you can't. Tank, there were questions about if he could hold up, but I don't think that was a bad pick. I don't have any tangible fears about the wide receiver. DT, whatever he does at DT, I trust. He knows what to get out of those guys. As far as the argument for a round 1 wide receiver, I don't think you have to make an argument. I don't think an argument is necessary. And I said this yesterday, and I think this needs to be said. They still have one of the weakest wide receiver rooms in the league. By the way, they might be a distant second in the division. We'll give you the latest on what's going on in Jacksonville in a second. But last year they had Nico and Tank, and they still traded for Diggs. Teams need wide receivers. This team needs wide receivers more than most teams. And their top 2 guys get hurt. So I don't think you need to argue at wide receiver. I think all you got to do is look at what happened last year and what they did in the situation they're in right now. Now, does that mean that you just draft a guy just because? I don't know who they like. I like, obviously the names are Bolden, McMillan, Pipe Dream, Golden, and Ibuka. But right now they have similar production from the number 2, number 3 in Christian Kirk, and they have Nico, who's probably playing at a little bit higher level. But yeah, I don't think you have to argue for the wide receiver. I think wide receiver is still a really, really good really, really good move. For sure. There's no doubt about it. And Luther Burden is a guy someone's asking in the chat. Yeah, he's nice. I don't know if he's 25 nice. Little raw. But you don't have to make too strong of an argument for the wide receiver. Robert on the chat says Nick should give the offensive coordinator more input on offensive line player selections, as that's not his strength. It's time to change our approach since what we've been doing isn't working. Yeah, I would think Nick Caley's going to have something to say about it. I also think Nick Caley has a decent offensive line background. I think that's an area that he pays pretty close attention to. But look, Nick Caserio might end up drafting well offensive line. He might end up figuring out some stuff. He's been as bad as you could possibly be at it up to this point. I don't think you could do a worse job when it comes to the offensive line than the job Nick Caserio has done. And I guess we can blame D'Amico Ryans too. Like, for as great as the Texans are and all their strengths, and I think Nick Caserio deserves all the credit in the world for that, as well as D'Amico, their biggest weakness, Nick Caserio could not be worse at it if he tried. They gave Tunsil the extension. There really hasn't been like some contagious, like, follow the leader type of thing there. Titus Howard got an extension. I don't know why the hell that happened. The Shaq, and then Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, Shaq Mason. It's been as bad of a job of offensive line evaluation as you can possibly have. WBF says, so do you think Mechie will be, or Hutch be helping? No, those guys don't even exist right now to me. If they show up in camp and they try to make the team, that's fine. Those guys have had back-to-back years to try to step up when the other guys were hurt. They haven't been able to get open. And it's been very inconsistent, and they produce so poorly that if they make one or two plays, the world stops. Those guys are not top-end wide receivers. So no, I'm not big on Mechie or Hutchinson. It depends who's there at wide receiver. Depends who's there. I was thinking about this the other day, and if you just go through the 53, let's say we're like going through the 53 and we're just putting like the names below, like each position, where you put QB and you put Stroud, then you put Mills and you put Mixon. I would say that as much as it would kind of, I want to say baffle people, but it would kind of be ho-hum if the Texans went DT or linebacker. You can make a case that those two position groups are the position groups where they don't have an impact player. Just go through the entire roster. Tight end, you can say as well. But running back, you have Mixon. Wide receiver, you have Nico. Quarterback, you have CJ. Edge, you have Will and Daniil. Corner, you have Lassiter and Stingley. Safety, you have Bullock. DT, No real like significant impact player. And same thing in linebacker. I like Aziz fine, but he's just fine. He's okay. Can you count on Aziz being like the face of your defense 2 years from now? I don't know. I don't know how long that shelf life is. I know they love him, but I don't think I don't think the linebacking group and the D tackle group, I think there's a bunch of solid players and they're very well coached and their surroundings make it a lot easier for them. But you can make a case that when it comes to those positions, they don't have impact guys. Now, DT, you're probably anticipating 3 to 5 guys maybe go off the board before you pick, maybe 3 to 5. So you're kind of in the same position that you were last year with Lassiter. If you hit on a DT like you did with Lassiter, then that's a hell of a pick. But from like a linebacker perspective, I just wonder if D'Amico Ryans falls in love with a linebacker. And I always say this about linebackers, and a lot of times this is true with running backs. You get the crack at the best one more times than not. A lot of times at the end of the first round, a linebacker won't go. So you'll get to the linebacker that you think is the best linebacker in this draft, you can get him. Safety sometimes, I don't think that's going to happen this time. Although it would be a dream scenario. I'm not saying Aziz isn't nice. I'm just saying, like, when I think impact guy, I'm thinking like this time next year, can you 100% without a doubt say that Aziz is going to be playing better ball and be able to be like, if he's your best guy at that position, then you're in good shape. I think you can say that about Nico. I think you can say that about CJ. I think maybe you can say that about Mixon. I don't know. He's getting older. Maybe. Tunsil probably. Although who knows if he's a part of the future plans. Stingley, even Lassiter, Bullock. Can't say that about Aziz. They don't draft for just 1 year windows. They draft for 2. They showed that last year. We'll see what happens with Christian Harris. This is different. Like if you would have told me this point last year, Christian Harris is getting an extension and he's established himself as D'Amico's guy, then dang, maybe I'm sleeping on Christian Harris. Maybe that's very possible. That's insanely possible. He wasn't ready to go last year, it didn't seem. And they didn't really push it too much. The problem is he gets hurt. It's Jimmy Ward-like almost. Where you might see some good things, but and Jimmy's at least old. Christian Harris is going into his 4th season. Now, the good news is, if you want to look at it glass half full, the good news is maybe you get a motivated Christian Harris. He's kind of fighting for his football life. Like if he has a year like he did last year or his rookie year, I mean, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a guy that's just going to hop around the league? I mean, D'Amico spoke very highly of him, and he was a damn good player in 2023. So maybe that's your linebacker. Maybe I'm sleeping on Christian Harris. I'm fine sleeping on him. I have no problem with it. I think he's good enough to handle it. It's just can he hold up? But that might be your guy. And maybe there's some sort of blessing in disguise where you're not talking about the extension. He's going to have to figure something out. Maybe he has like 5 good games and you extend him and you get him at a bargain and then he establishes himself as like D'Amico's poor man's Fred Warner or something. Who knows? Henry Toto is a very solid ball player. He is a winning piece. He is a guy he's going to make a 10-year NFL career out of himself. Henry Toto, while Shaq Mason and whoever else were eating, Henry Toto, he told me himself, I was a fat ass last year. He came in shape and he played good ball. And quite frankly, at the end of the year, when Christian Harris came back, it made more sense to have Toto out there. He was awesome. Day 3 pick, he's done everything that you could possibly ask. But we're talking about the first round here. We're talking about the first round. When it comes to getting some sort of baller. Trade and bringing up something else. Petrie at nickel made that Ward extension look even more foolish. I just didn't get that. I didn't understand the Jimmy Ward extension from the jump. I don't even think he expected it. That was weird, honestly. I like Jimmy Ward when he's out there. I think he's a better nickel than Petrie. If we're being honest, I think he's better. I mean, he was elite at that in San Francisco. Started out as a corner, moved into safety, then he was a nickel. Top 100 NFL player the year before he came to the Texans at nickel. He was playing his ass off when Petrie was out. For whatever reason, he doesn't want to play nickel. Probably because a little bit rougher on the body than safety. But to his credit, he pivoted and he agreed to play nickel. So they gave him the extension before that. It's not like some sort of massive extension. And quite frankly, if Jimmy Ward can play, you can figure it out. That's a guy who takes care of himself. Jimmy Ward takes care of, it's not like Jimmy Ward isn't, taking care of his body. Sometimes it's just bad luck when you get hurt. But it was a weird extension. I agree. Not as weird as Titus, but it was a weird extension. I like Jimmy Ward a lot. I think he's one of the more entertaining guys on the squad. Other news with the Texans, speaking of Azeez Al-Shire, the Texans restructured his deal. Simple structure, as they say again. They're clearing up the cap space with the Shaq Mason move. They cleared up the cap space with Nico's deal, and now they clear it up with Azeez. So they're clearing up space to figure out something in free agency, which is 3 days away. We'll be live, myself and Stoots. We'll be live, probably individually, whatever. We'll figure something out. We'll figure it out. SSG says he's tired of hearing he gets hurt. It's the NFL. Everyone gets hurt. I don't know what that means, sir. Some guys get hurt more than others. Not everyone gets hurt like Jimmy Ward or Christian Harris. But yeah, it is the NFL, though. Very correct. Cebu with a good question. Good kind of transition here. What's going on in Jacksonville? Well, there's a couple of things going on in Jacksonville. And I've been kind of hesitant. I've had some fun making fun of what they got going on. Tony Baselli's calling the shots. He's got some Poindex he's pulling around that's got the GM title. They got a coach who's getting mocked for the way he says Duval. But I'm starting to wonder if Jacksonville's cooking something up. Jacksonville's not far off from the Texans at all. They could have easily won the division 2 seasons ago. Man, if Trent Baalke would have taken Xavier Hutchinson, that would have been scary. But they were close to winning the division, the meltdown, and then last year they had all the injuries. But now you look at what's going on. So they got rid of Christian Kirk and Ingram. And you kind of wonder, okay, what are they going to do there? Like, they got Brian Thomas Jr. He's one of the best young wide receivers in the league. I think he's going to be better than Nico. I'll be honest. I'll just say it. I think he's going to be better than Nico. Is that harsh? No, I think Nico's a good player. I think Brian Thomas is going to be better than Nico. So I think they'll have the best wide receiver in the AFC South. Texans will have the second. Both Pro Bowl caliber players. But depending on what the quarterback situation is, I think Brian Thomas is going to be better than Nico. Then you look at this with them getting rid of Kirk and Ingram. And look, they don't have the quarterback on the rookie deal. Or it's about to kick in. They are now the betting favorite to acquire Cooper Kupp. So Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp is possibly going to Jacksonville. Questions are very clear, the injuries, all that, but we know Cooper Kupp at his best can ball, and it hasn't been too long ago since we've seen that. So Cooper Kupp is the betting favorite. Do with that what you must. Then you look at them getting rid of Ingram. And it's really interesting because nobody's caught more balls from Trevor Lawrence than Evan Ingram. I think he was top 5 in the league 2 years ago. It was one of my crazy ass stats. 2 years ago, Evan Ingram was, and I want to make sure I get this right because I brought this up. I don't know, receptions can be kind of misleading at times, especially on dump offs and all that. But Evan Ingram in 2023. He led all tight ends in receptions. And he was 4th in the NFL with 114 receptions, Evan Ingram. And he had only 3 guys ahead of him were CeeDee Lamb and then Tyreek Hill and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So he was 4th in the league in receptions, Evan Ingram. So you got to wonder. They're drafting Tyler Warren, right? Like they're going to add Cooper Kupp and Tyler Warren. That's their plan, right? They're going to we don't know what Tyler Warren's going to be. We've seen tight ends more times than not they bust out. But they're following up on the Brock Bowers thing and hoping they got the next Brock Bowers, right? That's what Jacksonville's doing, right? It feels that way. A lot of times you can kind of feel out the draft and feel out what's going on. It kind of feels like Kupp replaces Kirk, and then Tyler Warren replaces Ingram. Kind of feels that way. They bust out is crazy. Holy pause. You are saying pause. Look at all the tight ends drafted. They're usually in the first round. They're usually bad. Brock Bowers might kind of be what creates the Jags copycat plan with Tyler Warren. On the Brian Thomas thing, Cougar says, I would argue Brian Thomas Jr. is top 7, 8. Chase says BJT, best wide receiver in the AFC South after this season. I just said that earlier. Yeah, I mean, I thought maybe I would get more pushback since this is a Texans thing. But yeah, it's really interesting to watch. The Jags and Texans could be doing battle in the next year. St. Louis Rebel on the chat says, this is why I didn't understand why Texans fans were happy about Kirk. Jags about to get Kupp to pair with Brian. They'll have a better wide receiver group than yeah. I mean, that's definitely about a better wide receiver group. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. But yeah, you can pick your poison between Nico and Brian Thomas Jr. You can pick your poison on that. H-Town 94 said Nico is pretty damn good. Remains to be seen if Brian Thomas will even be good, let alone better. You don't think Brian Thomas is good right now? It remains to be seen if Brian Thomas will be good, let alone better. Well, he was better last year. Or he was close to it. If you don't think Brian Thomas Jr. is good right now, that's a tough ass crowd. That's a tough ass crowd right there. Real tough crowd. He had no quarterback last year. Brian Thomas Jr. was third in the league in yards. He had 1,282 yards. Nico had 1,006. Now, Thomas played 17 games. Nico played 12. Do you just dismiss that? If there's a large sample size of Nico missing games, I would not. Because that's kind of the norm. So Brian Thomas did something that Nico Collins has never done in his entire career in year one. He played every single game of the season. Nico's never done that. That's never happened. So he did that. He had 1,282 yards. He had 87 catches. Nico had 68. He had 10 touchdowns. Nico had 7. 14.7 per catch. Nico had 14.8. And keep in mind, Trevor Lawrence was hurt for a long time. His long was 85. Nico's was 67. Yards per game, 75.4 to 83.8. So Nico had a little edge on that. No one said Nico wasn't good. But you're saying we need to see if Brian Thomas will be good? I'm not sipping what Kool-Aid? I'm sipping third in the league in yards Kool-Aid. You just said he's not even good. That's the kind. I like that kind of fandom, though. I like that kind of fandom. But if you can type Brian Thomas isn't good, goodness gracious, I can guarantee you your computer is covered in red and a battle red and steel blue face paint. If you can't admit Brian Thomas is good, I have no problem admitting he might be the best receiver in the AFC South now. You're saying I'm sipping Kool-Aid? You said he wasn't good. You're sipping haterade. I'm sipping water. I'm sipping water and watching and reacting to what he had. Balin says this. Nico had 1K in 12 games, and one of them he left after playing like one snap after tweaking his hammy on the long TD. So what does that mean exactly? Like, is that a defense? Because it would be one thing if it was a one-off. But Nico Collins misses games. And a lot of times when he's not missing games, he leaves early. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think Nico Collins is one of the better receivers in the league. I actually think that's part of the reason why you were able to get Nico Collins at a pretty relatively team-friendly deal, given how he produces when he's playing. But his rookie season, he played 14 games. He missed 3. He was hobbled up in a couple more. 2022, he played 10 games. He was hobbled up in a few more. 2023 was his most healthy season. He played 15. Now, remember, he left the first play after the Jets game. After he had the catch against the Jets, he left. So there's a gray area there. Last year, he missed 5 games. So is that like, if that's like more of the norm, is it really right when evaluating these guys to say, well, he did this, if you would have equaled that out over an entire season? Is that how we're doing it? Like, that would almost be like Jimmy Ward. Jimmy Ward had this many tackles. If he would have played this many games, I'm not saying it's gotten to that point yet, but I mean, it's a similar path. What does that mean if that's what has been the case? We need to open our eyes and see that. Nico gets hurt. He gets hurt. That's not haterade. That's reality. Good player. Nico was the best in the league until his injury. Okay, when has he not been injured? Like what? Like, are we turning injuries off next year? Are we having like a Madden simulation? Are we going to turn them off until his injury? We'll probably. I mean, there's a chance we're saying that over the course of the entire career. There's going to be a soft tissue thing. There's going to be something else. Nobody dislikes Nico, but it's weird to evaluate Nico Collins and say, well, if he had played this many games, we're 4 years into this thing. We're 4 years into this. That was the number one criticism of Nico Collins. Nobody questions what Nico Collins and CJ Stroud can do on the field. When we were talking about Nico Collins and getting an extension, we were talking about he's missed games. He didn't in 2023. They paid him. And then he missed 5 games in 2024 after they started out 5-1 and the offense completely fell off a cliff. Dylan says BJT is good, but his stats are definitely inflated by garbage time against backups. Do you have like numbers to back that up? Because I always hear that like with players on bad teams. And I'm not disputing it. It just does seem like some of the biggest radio hacks that I've ever heard, they'll say that, and then you actually look at the stats, and it's like, well, that wasn't really the case. Like he was actually producing more early on. There's probably a way to look at this. I'm not saying it's the craziest assumption to have, but I don't know whether or not that's true. And the other thing is, if we're talking about backups, I mean, does the fact that he was playing with a backup quarterback a large majority of the time, or a quarterback with one arm, does that factor into the variable? I think there's multiple ways to look at it. I'm not saying it's a bad assumption or anything. I don't know what garbage time is or isn't. Like me personally, like when I saw Nico Collins, remember when the Texans were beating the shit out of the Steelers? And I think they were up 30 and Nico Collins got like the 45-yard pass on the bottom. I didn't hold that against him because they were beating their ass. So, I mean, that could be true. Don't know if it's factual or not. But I've heard people say it. I mean, I'm looking at the Jags schedule here. And let's just look at their losses, okay? They lost 17-20, they lost 13-18. They lost 47-10. They lost 20-34. They lost 37-34, 16-35, 32-16 dub, 27-30 L, 23-28 L, 7-12 L, 52-6. Lions beat that ass. And then on the back end of the season, they lost to the Texans 20-23. Then they lost 10-6. They lost 25-32. They lost 14-19. They lost 20-13. They lost 23-6. So their last 6 games, they lost 20-23. They lost by 3. They won by 4. They lost by 7. They lost by 5. They won by 7. And they lost by 3. Then they have a 5-point loss to add to that, a 5-point win, a 3-point loss, a 3-point win, a 14-point loss, a 5-point loss, and a 3-point loss. Kind of seems like that's just kind of made up when it comes to Brian Thomas. Kind of feels like that's just made up. Izzy on the soup says, you're the realest, no BS, no nothing, you're real. Damn, I appreciate that. I always think it's funny when someone says real talk. It's like, man, you should always have real talk. I'm going to keep it 100. So you weren't before. Yeah, I think Nico's great. I think Brian Thomas is really good. I appreciate what he does. Yeah, I think he's good. I don't know if it's mop-up stats. Ja'Cory says, I can guarantee the guys in here saying BJT isn't good would have taken him with that first round pick instead of trading for Diggs. Well, yeah, I think anyone would do that. Would you would you trade your first this year for Brian Thomas Jr.? Yeah. Would you trade the first and third? Like the DK Metcalf price minus the contract. Like if you could have Brian Thomas on his rookie contract, would you trade your first and third for Brian Thomas Jr.? Yes or no? If you say no, you're lying. If you say no, you're lying. Italo says he has a wet dream. My wet dream could be free agency targets, Trey Smith, Dre Dahlman, prospects. You want Booker. Damn, so you're going heavy O-line. Hey, if they fix it, cool. I take it you want the O-line. Balin says no one said Brian Thomas Jr. wasn't good. Can you read, sir? Or is that mask covering your eyes? Let me see. Oh, it looks like you got eyes right there, right? Yeah, mask ain't covering your eyes, is it? Are you on a go-kart? Where are you on? Gaming? Mask might be covering your eyes. Definitely said we don't know if Brian Thomas Jr. is good. Pull the mask down. Go up. Scroll up. You'll see it. You'll see it. What do I think about Jonathan Allen getting cut? Be another Jonathan Allen situation. Maybe you have something for him. Look, I don't know. I'm not the offensive line expert. I think Stoots follows that a little bit more. I'm not the offensive line expert. Don't pretend to be. Sorry. I didn't mean to turn this into a mask discussion either. There's people saying that masks don't work. Yeah. On the chat, this one's interesting. This isn't the first person who said this to me. Someone else said this to me this morning. Call me crazy, but is it a good time to trade Davis Mills? Hell no, you don't want to trade Davis Mills. Davis Mills is a really, really good backup. He's really, really, really cheap. And it helps to have an insurance policy. And I don't think it's like teams aren't dying to give you like elite draft equity for Davis Mills. Like who's trading for Davis Mills? We saw Geno Smith went for a third. Geno Smith's a 2-time Pro Bowler. He just went for a 3rd-round pick. So what are you even getting for Davis Mills? What are you even getting? I like having the good insurance policies. But I mean, backup quarterbacks are like car insurance. You feel like it's a waste of money until you actually need it. So no, I wouldn't trade Davis Mills. I think he's a good backup. SSG, you're on one today. Bro, name one single player that doesn't get hurt at least once per season. Brian Thomas Jr. That was easy. Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr., you got that. Gavin King on the chat says the guy who is concerned about the Jags have a better receiver core than the Texans. Don't forget they don't have Stingley. That's a hell of a point. You got, for all the talk about the receivers, the Texans got 2 cornerbacks who won all the smoke. Not just, I won't even say best. I don't think the Texans have the best young cornerback duo in the league. I won't say that. They have the best cornerback duo in the league, period. Young is a given. But as far as a cornerback duo, they have the best cornerback duo in the game, in the league. Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter. I'm telling you this right now. Kamari Lassiter is going to come in like a damn mofo next year. I bet you Kamari Lassiter is jacked. He's going to be on them Nolan Ryan weights. He's going to be that old school with the Advil.
Every day it's just me and a pile of iron.
Yeah. That's what he's going to be on. He'll be doing his thing for sure. But yeah, no trade for Davis Mills. Yeah, Bullock's good. Safety. We were talking corners, but yeah. Bullock's good. Bullock's gonna be good. He's gonna be big too. He's gonna be on that Nolan Ryan too.
Every day it's just me and a pile of iron.
He's coming in jacked. People were talking about his legs. He might not be ready to contribute. He can't tackle. He was undisciplined at USC. Boom, comes in, does his thing. Yeah, I get worried about Lassiter smacking his head. I keep worrying like he's going to give himself a concussion or something like that. Yeah, the Stingley transformation. Stingley came in looking jacked. Like the good rookies, they come in looking jacked. That's what the Texans are. I mean, what did Derek Stingley say this year on the pivot? What did he say? They said, you don't have a contract. Does that mean you're going to go to the facility? What did he say? What did Derek Stingley say? He didn't talk about Laramie Tunsil. He talked about Nico Collins. He said when Nico needed his extension, he was here every damn day, and he was getting his work in. So you bet your ass I'm gonna be here getting my work in. Him and Bolick are gonna be competing. Secondaries. That secondary is this close to being one of the best secondaries in the league. Might already be. If you could just get a good safety. And I like Jimmy Ward when he's healthy. It's just a big if. It's just a big if. BJT bad, Nico good. Bull rush. Y'all are arguing about this now. There's people who say no one questioned Brian Thomas. No one questioned him. We just said that all his stats were mop-up stats, and we said that despite his games were close, and we said that we don't know if he's good yet. The OL is an issue. I'm not the guy to solve that. I don't know how that is. Hidden gem in terms of free agency at wide receiver. Man, I don't know. You're always overpaying wide receivers in free agency. Now, maybe like the market clears out and you can get like a veteran guy on a 1-year deal. But as far as just a clear hidden gem, I know that there are too many. There's some vets. I wonder if Tyler Lockett goes to the Raiders now that Geno Smith's there. I think that's probably a possibility. I would have liked Tyler Lockett as like an upgrade over Robert Woods. It's really going to be kind of a kick to the nuts if they bring back Robert Woods just because they like him and he's kind of their kind of guy. I think you got to go find something like that. You got to find something like that. You can find another Robert Woods. But like the old guys that are being thrown out there, like Amari Cooper and stuff, man, you want to talk about can't stay healthy. Amari Cooper. He's pretty cooked. He did nothing. It was weird. The Bills threw that bubble screen to him in the playoff game on the third down before the failed fourth down conversion. And it was like, why are you throwing a bubble screen to Amari Cooper? What are we doing? He hasn't been a part of things at all. And they did that. Still talking Brian Thomas. Nico's never disappeared in a game. Brian Thomas can. Never? I kind of felt like there were times where he disappeared. They weren't throwing, for some reason, they like to throw bubble screens to other guys except Nico. Sometimes it takes a little too long to get him involved. It's not a bash at Nico to say that the guy who was third in the league in receiving last year might be better. It's a hell of a bar. Hell of a bar. Wide receiver still a big need. Other news in the NFL, Geno Smith traded to the Raiders for a third rounder. What does this mean in the draft? Does this mean the Raiders don't like Sanders? Maybe this means that the Raiders might be willing to trade up from the second round and get a rookie quarterback. It could just mean that Chip Kelly wants to get weapons. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. You know, they pay their offensive coordinator $7 million. And the answer for it is, hey, we're going to bring in Geno Smith and give him a contract. Raiders got a real Colts vibe to him. Just kind of shuffling through mediocre quarterbacks. Sometimes you can't find them, though. Sometimes it'd be like that. But I don't think you have to worry too much about the Raiders in the AFC. I think you're good there. Shout out to H-Town94. Appreciate you, my friend. 3 days till free agency, though. It's going to be fun. Bosa. I don't know what Bosa is. I don't know what his price tag is. Is Bosa even a starter anymore? He's missed a hell of a lot of games. Joey, I thought he was going to get cut last year, and I thought he could perhaps be an option. They obviously went with Daniil Hunter, which they obviously don't regret. That was one of the few good moves that they made when being aggressive on CJ Stroud's rookie deal. But I don't know. I mean, if Bosa was going to be like some sort of reserve guy, I just don't even know. Like, you have Nico Autry making like $10 million. He's older. He was hurt last year and he had the suspension, but like, is that where Bosa's at right now? Is Bosa like a $10 million player at this point? Or is someone probably going to give him like a 1 year 15, something like that? I don't know what Bosa is. I know his brother thinks the world of D'Amico. Nick Bosa loves D'Amico. Said he's the best coach he's ever played for. Said he could see his improvement and stuff. So I don't think Joey would be like opposed to it. I just don't know. Does he know he's a reserve guy? Or is someone going to give him a chance to start? I bet the Jags get Bosa. I could see it. They're Florida boys, aren't they? I think they're Florida boys, aren't they? They went from Florida to Ohio State. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure they're Florida kids. But yeah, I'm interested. I don't think it happens here, but I do wonder like what the price point is for Joey Bosa, given what we've seen from him the last few years and given what the potential is. I think there's kind of a balance. I say no one. I don't think that anyone's going to just break bread for him. But you never know. Jacksonville is always a place to overpay guys, although they're doing their thing right now. I like Ingram. I just don't know. Like, I don't want to say he's Dalton Schultz-like because he's better. He's a better receiver, but I think they might love Stover. I think Ingram's a better Dalton Schultz. I'll say that, but I don't think they're kind of stuck with Dalton Schultz. This next year is pretty guaranteed. It's pretty much a tight end franchise tag. They pretty much gave him two. Did Kyle Pitts get released or something? He's still on the Falcons, isn't he? Did I miss something? Hey, he's still there. Yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you mean kick the tires? Trade for him? Yeah, I mean, they gave him kind of a vote of confidence the other day. So I don't know where Kyle Pitts even came in the conversation. I guess we're starting to play Madden now. Sounds fun. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Subscribe, like, ride along. Little personal info. I haven't eaten in 3 days now. I'm about to eat my first meal in 3 days, right here at midnight. I haven't eaten in 3 days. I had to get the colon checked and decided to go on a cleanse. So maybe I've just been a little hangry when it comes to Brian Thomas. Who knows? Regardless, when it comes to this Texan stuff, we're all in it together. Appreciate y'all for coming through. Free agency next week. Couple days. Good Lord, where is the time gone? Appreciate you.
Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days. Opinions to give, we got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up. We number one. You don't need to try your luck. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize, every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too.